Hello, everybody. Um, my name is Fred Price. I'm with Earlens, and we're about to get started here. While we're waiting for everyone to join, our participants usually find that it's helpful to have a paper and pen or pencil with them to take notes on things that we're sharing or to write down questions. So if you want to go ahead and get a paper and pen and pencil, we'll get started here in just a moment. Also want to go through a couple of housekeeping items. To ask questions at any time, I think some of you guys have already found the question bar. If you write that question in, we will get to it. We may not get to it in the beginning or in the middle of the seminar or the webinar here, but I assure you we will get to your question. So we'll get started here in just a second. So the agenda today will be to talk about Earlens technology and how it's different from traditional hearing aids. And then we'll talk through the improvements in hearing that patients typically receive. We'll hear from other patients that have actually had the device, and we'll even hear from some of the audiologists here at Midwest ENT, and one of them who is actually fit with the device. So I think you guys will all be interested in hearing that. Dr. Scott will be along shortly, so we'll get started here in just a minute. Okay, we're going to go ahead and get started here. I'm going to start off with some introductions of the practice and everybody who will be on the webinar today. So I want to go ahead and be transparent with you guys. So Dr. Scott, who is going to be on the webinar here at some point, is actually in a surgery right now. And so we'll wait for him to come over here in just a few minutes, but he will be joining us. So let's get started here. So I want to go ahead and talk about Midwest ENT and introduce you to the people that we're going to be talking to today. Many of you have been patients at Midwest ENT, practiced before, but they're also serving new people attending today's webinar, so we wanted to tell you a little bit more about them. Midwest ENT Allergy is the area's specialist in total care of the ear, nose, and throat and sinuses. And the physicians are board certified as head and neck surgeons, ENT allergists, facial plastic surgeons, hearing care physicians, and sinus specialists. They have 5 ENT physicians here, 5 audiologists, which by the way is the primo ratio of audiologists to ENTs, and a staff of over 50. That possess a unique combination of training and experience to provide the patients with the very best care and a diverse array of medical and surgical treatments. Honestly, Midwest ENT is the best ENT in town, and we're very pleased that they've chosen us to work with. At Earlens, we know that we need a practice that also is well-trained and the best in town, and so we've sort of chosen each other. Midwest ENT puts their patient needs first, and they pride themselves on excellent patient care and patient experience. So Midwest ENT, I'll introduce you to some of the people here in just a second, but the reason they decided to offer Earlens is that they found that many of their patients were seeking a product with higher sound quality. And they're excited to offer the patients with such a revolutionary technology, and we're excited to be working with them. This new lens is going to be sitting right on the eardrum there. It will vibrate the eardrum directly, which means 35% better sound quality, but we'll get to all that here in just a minute. So just in way of introduction, today on the webinar, we will have Dr. Scott. He got his bachelor's and doctorate of medicine from the University of British Columbia, a residency in otolaryngology, head and neck surgery at the University of Alberta, a fellowship in otology, neurotology, and skull-based surgery at California Ear Institute of Stanford. So this is one of the best trained ENTs you will ever find anywhere in the country, and you've got them right here in Sioux Falls. Board certified in sleep medicine and otolaryngology. So that fellow up on the screen right next to him doesn't have this beard, but I'm an audiologist. I'm with Earlens these days, but I've been doing this for 25 years. I'm originally from North Carolina, went to North Carolina State University, East Carolina for graduate school. And since then, my career has been devoted to helping to train audiologists to help their patients. And so I'm very pleased to be working with Earlens and be with you guys today. Also on the webinar will be Ryan Clark, who works with Earlens as well as an account manager. And this guy has all kinds of experience in the med device industry and has been working with building businesses and working with ENTs in the past at companies like Clarence, who was acquired by Johnson & Johnson and so forth. But really just a wealth of knowledge in terms of working with ENT space. So I will also, come on in, Dr. Scott. All right. So we got everybody here, and this is Dr. Scott. So glad to have you here today. And just like it is with busy ENT practices, sometimes the talented surgeon actually has to do surgery, and we can't. The patient comes first, so we're glad he's been able to make it here now.
Yeah, I'm glad to be here.
All right. So I was just finishing introducing Ryan, myself, and I'm going to see if I can get Bob and Jade on the camera there for just a second. Okay, Bob and Jade, can you guys sort of introduce yourselves there?
Hi, everyone. My name is Jade Husby. I'm an audiologist here. I've been here for a little over a year and have worked with Earlens since we started doing it about a year ago. Super excited to tell you all about this really cool technology, and I'll let Bob introduce himself.
Hi, I'm Bob Frobe, and I've been with Midwest ENT and Allergy now for 9 years, and I've been in the field of audiology for 32 years. And as Fred mentioned earlier, I too am an Earlens patient myself and experiencing some pretty amazing results since being fitted with these about 2 months ago. So.
All right. Well, I appreciate hearing from both of you, and we'll hear more from you as we go along here. So I'm going to turn it over here to Dr. Scott and just let you kind of go forth.
Okay.
I'll handle the slides.
Oh, okay.
Unless
sure.
you want to.
But the one I see there is the one that they're seeing?
Yes, that's right.
So hearing loss is a very common problem in the United States, with about 44 million adults considered to have significant hearing loss, and not nearly that number are getting the help that they need. It's sitting in a booth listening to beeps in a hearing test, it obviously isn't real life. So there's lots of effects from hearing loss that people have. They describe struggling with hearing when they're trying to socialize with their friends and family. they missed the birds that they could hear when they, in this picture, went for a hike. And they also, music isn't what it used to be. So there's a lot of different aspects of hearing that people are trying to set the clock back a little bit and get something, back the way they remember it, or at least close. If I have patients sometimes that are accused of not having quite the sense of humor that they had because they don't hear the inflections of the sound, because telling a joke, the sounds might, or the frequencies might go up a little bit in certain ways. You just kind of miss some of those things. Or you might misunderstand a word, like you might think somebody's talking about school, but they're really asking something about your swimming pool. And so some words are similar enough with just the endings or just the beginnings being different, that if you miss those critical parts, you miss the understanding of the conversation.
Absolutely. And for you guys watching, at this point, if you can think of a personal story just like Dr. Scott was relating there, where your hearing loss, even if you have hearing aids now that really bothered you, and might be talking about school, like he said, or in a restaurant, and just sort of keep that in mind. And then think about what it would have been like to hear well in that situation. So. Dr. Scott?
Well, as I was mentioning before, the vast majority of those 44 million people, excuse me, that would benefit from some sort of amplification either don't wear hearing aids regularly, or they don't wear them at all. And so we always think there's help for things, but if it's not being used, then obviously it's not of help to anybody. So they did a medical study where they asked people, well, why aren't you wearing them, especially if they did have hearing aids, or at least had tried them. And the biggest complaint was they just didn't like that sound quality. So obviously we need to find something that has a little better sound quality. So Earlens works differently. I'm not sure. Did you show them? You showed them how the normal ear works already.
We haven't done that yet.
Oh, okay, okay. So Earlens works differently. It's a tiny lens placed against the eardrum, and that represent or recreates the vibrations that sound should do to vibrate the eardrum. Because it directly vibrates, it's sort of like a direct stimulation. You were able to sort of give a better and more accurate amplification, better than just putting a speaker in your ear and having the sound bounce around.
Right, and we're going to show you here a video in just a second that goes through some of that in a little more detail. Coming up here right this second. Okay, So that video gives you a little bit of an idea of the benefits of this Earlens system over what's a typical acoustic hearing aid. And as an audiologist, I wanted to get into what does it mean for your hearing. And the best way to do that, and if you've ever had your hearing tested before, you've probably seen something that looks like this. This is an audiogram, and what we're looking at here is if we look at the graph here right at 500 hertz, 500 hertz, that's a frequency, it's a lower frequency. For this person to hear that 500 hertz tone, it would have to be, if you look over on the left scale here, around 30 dB for them to hear 500 hertz. So in the lower pitches, they were able to hear pretty well. And that's what this scale basically is. So it's going to be low pitches on this end, high pitches on this end. It'll be very, very, very soft up here. And then the further down that the scale goes, the louder the audiologist had to make those beeps for you to hear them. And remember, it's not just that's where you hear it every time. This is the very softest. For this individual, it basically works like this. If the person was hearing low-pitched sounds, they can hear them pretty well. But as things become more high-pitched, their hearing loss becomes lower and lower. And here, for instance, at around 4,000 hertz, the person would have to have that be 70 dB before they could hear that tone. That's loud conversation of about 70 or 65 dB. So if we look at this next slide, the volume range of normal speech and everyday sounds exists right around in this area here. And for this individual, basically at 30 dB, that's almost like a whisper. And for normal speech, they're not going to be able to hear quite a bit of these sounds here. So these are the type of sounds that surround you and fill your everyday life every single day. It comes down to this. On this particular graph, if it is soft enough to be in this area, then this particular person with this hearing loss, they can't hear those sounds. And if it's loud enough so that it's in this area down here, they can. So you can see that this person has a lot of problems with those high-pitched sounds. So, for instance, if you look at this frequency right here at 1,000 hertz, it would have to be pretty loud, to 65 dB or louder for you to hear them. So that's really common. Most of the hearing losses, I don't want to say most of the hearing losses, but it does seem that way that we see here at Midwest ENT, and I'm sure Dr. Folk and Dr. Scott and the other audiologists can concur, look pretty much like this. This is why you can understand people, this is why you can hear people talking, but you can't always understand them. And this is where hearing loss gets most significant. So think about the high-pitched sounds. Do you know which sounds might be at those high frequencies? Well, I'll give you a little bit of a hint. When I cover up my mouth and start talking like this, I take away a lot of the high frequencies. And guess what it sounds like? It sounds like I'm mumbling. And guess what we hear from people who really come in and sort of in denial about their hearing loss? They say everybody's mumbling. Well, here's why. So on the screen, you'll see different parts of speech, different sounds. And this is unamplified, but for this particular patient, right now, they can hear all of these sounds down here in this area there. I don't know if you can see my little blue circle there. So let me clear that out. Let's see here. There we go. And I'm going to use the little yellow circle instead. So these sounds right here, this person would hear because they're lower frequency sounds. They're vowel sounds. But as you can see on this, things like the TH sound, the F and the S, for this person, without hearing amplification, they are completely inaudible, especially when it gets in noise. So you can imagine if you can't hear all those sounds that people are making when they talk, it can be very difficult to understand, and it can get pretty frustrating. And one of the things that we really hate to see is it makes people not want to go to those locations. One of the kind of interesting things here is that what that can cause. So if you take away some of those sounds, the consonants, a lot of times confusion can set in. So, for instance, what you're seeing on the screen there, Wheel of Fortune, you take away some of the letters there, and can you solve the puzzle? Well, that's what everybody does when they're in noise. Even people who hear well, they actually fill in parts of the puzzle. But somebody who's hearing impaired, even with somebody with hearing aids that maybe don't amplify those high frequency sounds as well as they could, have trouble with something like this. So for instance, have you guys solved the puzzle? Maybe it says, if I said it was 53 and funny, you'd say, okay, that makes sense. But what if it actually said 63 and sunny? And it's that particular...
It may be a new concept to you that different speech sounds have different frequencies, which makes some sounds harder to hear than others. But you can actually use a tool called a spectrogram to show how different sounds occur at different frequencies. First, let's look at words that contain more low frequencies and may be easier to hear. Words with lots of vowels like bunny, now, and dollar. Now let's look at some words with high frequency sounds that people with hearing impairment may struggle to understand. Words like cat and cap, first and thirst, or wisp and wish.
So I kind of went into that.
It may be a new concept to you that different speech sounds have different frequencies, which makes some sounds harder to hear than others. But you can actually use a tool called a spectrogram to show how different sounds occur at different...
Sorry about that.
I guess it's worth hearing twice.
It's probably so. So the video that you were watching there, actually, I love that video. It gives you an idea using something called a spectrogram of the fact that speech has all of the sounds, all of the frequencies involved in it. And so if you're missing any particular part of that, you're missing some parts of the speech. But honestly, these days, it's not just about hearing speech or sound quality that when it comes to hearing loss. So Dr. Scott, I want to let you talk a little bit about this.
Okay. Well, I mean, there has been some recent research that shows that because the ears are such a big source of the electrical activity for the brain, when you start to lose some of your input from your ears because you've got hearing loss, especially in those high frequencies, and the electrical activity going up into your brain isn't as much as what your brain would like, your brain kind of, you can think of it as getting a little lazy. And unfortunately, a lazy brain starts to have more trouble with memory, difficult tasks, thinking through things, can even lead to things like symptoms that would go along with depression even, and those kinds of things. But what's really being shown lately is its association with dementia, Alzheimer's, those kinds of things. And also, the good news is that if you do replace it and you start to provide more electrical activity than you were before, then that's one of the main things that you can do to have the most vigorous brain. So it's not just bad news. There's something that you can do that's good news.
Yeah, fantastic. We encourage all of you, no matter whether you think you have a hearing loss or not, to come down and get tested because it really is important for your overall health. Let's see here. So one of the things we've been talking about is the full range of sound. You'll probably hear me and Dr. Scott and the other audiologists talk about bandwidth quite often, from the lowest pitch sounds to the highest pitch sounds. Full range of sounds does equal the best speech understanding. So let's talk a little bit about how the Earlens system actually works. So for a typical acoustic hearing aid, and by the way, we're not slamming hearing aids here. Midwest will fit the best particular product for your hearing loss. And in some cases, hearing aids are the way to go. But for the typical acoustic hearing aid, what you're looking at here is that there is a hearing aid type thing that goes on the back of your ear, and then usually a wire, and then there's just a speaker that goes into your ear. that's pretty much true of any acoustic hearing aid. There's always a speaker that puts sound into the ear. Unfortunately, that tiny little speaker is not capable of producing a full range of sounds. But with hearing aids and what they can do, remember what we were talking about earlier, and we're back to the audiogram here, and I pointed out that if the patient was hearing these sounds here, this person could hear the low frequency sounds fine. Well, with the hearing aid, what the hearing aid does is give you back that sort of green region right here. So we've taken the patient's hearing loss from being like this to like this instead with the hearing aid. So it's a good thing. We actually have now captured these sounds right in here. And so some of the SH and CH sounds, that's why hearing aids do help. The problem is we're still missing some of the other sounds in the higher frequencies up in this area here, as well as the fact that those sounds that we just talked about were right at the threshold. So they're really difficult to hear even with hearing aids right now. With the Earlens, we're actually putting a device, like Dr. Scott was saying, down in your ear, placed by Dr. Scott. And because it's driving the eardrum directly, and we'll talk a little bit more about how it works here in just a second, because it's driving the eardrum directly, we're able to offer a much wider bandwidth.
And on if you go back,
please,
on that picture, I mean, between that person's fingers, that is an ear lens. So it's about the size of a dime, and it's custom made to the shape of your eardrum and the skin that comes into the ear canal just outside it. So it sits in just the right place. So that's what that person's holding there.
Yeah, absolutely. And the reason that we at Earlens believe that the best partnership to help with your hearing is always a partnership between a talented audiologist and a talented ENT physician like Dr. Scott here. As you can imagine, with something that tiny, it takes some skill to place it in the ear, but it's not surgical, and it's something with his skill that can be removed quite quickly as well. The good news here is that because it's driving the eardrum directly, you're going to get better hearing and better sound quality. So let's take a look again back at that graph. So remember, we're looking at the audiogram originally was here. And so this patient could hear these sounds in the lows, but couldn't hear the sounds up in the higher frequencies. Notice the wider bandwidth now. All of these sounds here in the green are now amplified, not just a little bit, but enough for the patient to understand even the F and the S. So understanding the difference between the P and pat and the B and bat are huge here. And those are some of the things that Earlens can bring with that wider bandwidth.
Thanks.
It's okay. So let's talk a little bit about how this works. Only the Earlens uses a small lens placed directly on the eardrum. And by sending sound information directly to the eardrum without a speaker, you get more complete sound. So if you're looking on this particular screen here, once again, there is sort of a hearing aid type device that sits behind your ear, and then a wire like with the acoustic hearing aids. But right here is where the difference starts to set in. This is a custom-made ear tip that fits in your ear, and it does not put sound in right here. And instead, it actually uses an electromagnetic transmission, a wireless transmission, down to the little end lens here placed by the doctor. Did you want to go over a little bit how that works?
Sure. So, because it's not sound bouncing around in there, you don't have the squealing and some of those things that really annoy people. And the interesting thing is, excuse me, this is like the world's smallest motor that this is moving. So this is kind of exciting stuff. I mean, so you kind of have this custom-made little platform that's, carrying the world's smallest motor, and that's what's wiggling your bones of hearing. And because it's actually mechanical wiggling, that's what allows you to get that bandwidth that you're allowed to stimulate so much wider of a frequency that in this picture that orange line is sort of represents where conventional hearing aids would amplify. The black line up top is what normal hearing is. And you can see the bottom one is Earlens. So they're able to give you some oomph in a lot of other frequencies that, you know, it's just physically impossible for conventional hearing aids to do, because there's some physics involved with the shape of the ear canal, and that being such a tiny area. I mean, you can't put a big speaker in there. It has to be a little one. So physics will only allow certain levels of amplification. Let's see. So that's been verified in studies, and so because it gives you the amplification over a broader spectrum, it's better for the things that my patients complain about, things like hearing and background noise and those kinds of things. Better able to enjoy music, some of those things that are more challenging situations, but things you really miss with losing your hearing.
Absolutely. So what we found here at Midwest ENT is that patients will be interested in moving forward with this just based upon the improvement in sound quality alone. But if you talk to the audiologist, and we'll talk to them here shortly, they will tell you that that's not enough. That if it sounds great to you, that's good, but they would almost rather it sound not as great to you and have you hear better in noise and do have better performance. And that's what this slide is about. Nothing at Earlens that we do is not researched and then peer reviewed in the audiological circles and the ENT circles. So we're very proud of the fact that you can go online and find research that proves that we can actually improve understanding and background noise with this system. We can improve your recognition of those consonant sounds that are hard to hear and the ones that basically also are swallowed up by noise. Nothing can make your hearing perfect once again, but it's that improvement from acoustic hearing aids that Earlens offers that is really the deciding factor. So what we're going to do next here, I've got one more slide, yeah.
And I'll just talk to this one.
Absolutely.
So, I mean, this isn't that long ago, 2020. And so this is a completely different thing. Like all the hearing aids that have gone before have been similar in that they take the sound, make it louder, and put it through a little microphone. This is the first one that really does a direct drive that acts in a completely different way. I think that's why some of my happiest patients are ones that have actually used hearing aids a lot before, because, you know, I mean, with a level of success, but also a level of frustration, because they kind of have something to compare to and can appreciate the improvement. But because of how unique this is, Earlens was actually identified as one of Time's best inventions in 2020. It's kind of a cool thing.
Absolutely. And what's interesting also to me is that right here in Sioux Falls, in Midwest ENT is one of the most experienced ENT clinics in the world for fitting Earlens. It says something about this area, and it says something about the staff here. So what we're going to show you next is a little bit of a video to give you an idea of a sound comparison between these two things.
Earlens uses revolutionary technology to directly vibrate the eardrum, giving you dramatically better hearing than traditional hearing aids. Just listen to these situations and hear the difference.
So now it's time for some patient testimonials. These that I'm about to show you have been videotaped. They're actual patients. And I love watching this every time because if you're an audiologist like I am, or someone, a professional in the hearing care field, an ENT physician like Dr. Scott, the reason we do what we do is to actually get better life improvements, to improve quality of life. And I think you'll agree that this illustrates that pretty well. But after we do this recorded testimonials, we'll get right to one of the audiologists here who's wearing the system himself, so you can hear straight from the Bob's mouth, so to speak. So let's, without further ado.
I started doing something that I found was very isolating, and that was to stop asking. I just tried to guess what someone was saying, and then you come up with those kind of answers that could answer anything, like, oh yeah, or you have no idea what they said.
I just noticed that music felt a little flat. It didn't have the richness. Even when I went and saw a concert in person.
I would misunderstand the words they would say, so it caused me to be a very introverted person and avoiding crowds and activities where I would be in a situation where I might misunderstand or not even hear the conversation and couldn't follow on what everyone else was talking about. So I really felt isolated from most other people and activities as a result.
If people talked to me, unless they were facing me, I didn't hear what they said. And it was very discouraging. So I stayed in my room by myself, and my TV was all the way up on 30.
The two hearing aids that I had prior to Earlens were worthless. They accomplished nothing.
I tried other brands, and the quality of the sound was not good. I found myself not always using them. They didn't solve my issues with hearing.
Asking people to repeat things when you're looking right at them is pretty embarrassing. And it just got to the point where I knew I had to do something.
The day that I found out about Earlens, it just changed everything for me. It really was the answer that I was seeking.
And I was very excited to make the appointment to have the ear lenses placed in my ears.
The process is really actually very simple. It's not a difficult process at all.
There's a device that is actually on your eardrum and another device that is the component that processes the sound.
We put this lens in your ear, and for me, it was like bingo. I said, oh my gosh, that's it.
Earlens is that technology improvement that I've been looking for.
I was walking from the kitchen through the living room, and I stopped because I heard an unusual noise. I couldn't figure out what it was. It was my feet compressing the carpet. This is something you can't express to someone.
After getting my brand new Earlens, I immediately turned the radio on to my favorite music, and I just sat there, and tears, I mean literally tears just came down.
When my grandkids we were doing something at their house and they were talking softly, and I said, now, why would you say that? And they all kind of went, well, Pops can hear now. It's a whole different world for me.
Now I know that when I walk into any situation, I'll be able to hear what's going on. And prior to Earlens, I could walk into any situation and wonder whether I was going to hear anything or not.
To have gone from obscurity and reclusion and isolation to hearing all these sounds again, as I described it, I've described it to many people. On December 29th, I had my second birthday.
From the first moment I got them, I was hooked to Earlens. There was no way I was going to go try something else. This is the way to go. They're worth every penny.
I would say your choice is to buy another product and be dissatisfied with it and waste that money and then go get an ear lens, or short circuit that and just go get the ear lens.
I went to bed almost every night with my hearing aids in, and my kitty purring in my ear would wake me up, and I'd go, oh, my hearing aids are still in, because they felt so normal, so natural.
It's been fantastic because I'm hearing things now that I haven't heard in 10 years. To me, it's, I want to say heaven.
I don't recommend things to people unless I really believe in it. And I don't think there's anything I've recommended more frequently than ear lenses to people that I know. There is no reason to postpone this decision, and there is no reason to not make the right choice, and the right choice is ear lens.
The day that I found out about Earlens, it just changed everything for me. It absolutely answered over and above anything I could have imagined. I told many people, I said, I've got my hearing back.
Okay, I guess I'm just going to take the cue since we had a quiet screen. Like I said, I'm Bob Froke, and I too am an ear lens patient. My history with hearing devices, I contacted sudden hearing loss about 7 years ago, and after going through my evaluation here and with the other audiologists and with Dr. Scott and getting cleared for whatever we thought could be going on that could possibly be treated medically, we decided nothing was going to work except hearing devices. Because with my hearing loss, I also had just some miserable tinnitus symptoms and just so annoying, ringing. It was just very, very stressful for me all the time. And I was fit with traditional acoustic devices that, for the most part, I was happy with, and I was getting some relief at the use of the tinnitus masking features that were in the device. But when I was introduced to this concept with ear lens by Dr. Scott a couple of years ago, and we just kept talking about it until I think it was in February of 2020 that we went out to California and attended the training seminar. And then we started fitting patients here about a year ago, but it was this summer that I was finally fit, took the step forward and decided to get fit with these devices. And I was just thoroughly surprised by the quality of sound, the ease of listening, just how much more it reduced the tinnitus symptoms for me. Now, there's no clinical research that's been documented as far as that goes, so it's mostly been anecdotal. But I'm not the only one who, when I work with my patients that tell me that their ringing symptoms have gone down, and it's just much, much more easier to live with. As far as when I'm out socially now, I just feel more confident and that I can flow with conversations, which makes it much, much more enjoyable evenings out and just overall quality of life. And so I tell my patients, when really all you have nothing to lose is your time, because we do offer a 60-day guarantee with our patients who go forward with their lens, that if they don't feel that it's made a big enough or significant enough difference in their hearing and in their quality of life, their ease of listening, their confidence, and just feeling more connected and engaged, they don't have to go forward with it. So.
Thanks very much, Bob. We really appreciate it. I think maybe everybody on this webinar agrees that me playing some recorded information from people who have had the device. There's nothing that compares to actually hearing live from an actual patient. And the idea that you as an audiologist with access to every possible hearing technology out there, and you've worn hearing aids for years, is that correct?
Yes, about 6 years.
Okay. And it's, when you can have access to anything and you've chosen to go ahead and have a very talented ENT physician work with you, get the lens set up just right. And can you just, one more thing I wanted you to relate to them, and I'm going to apologize if you already did, is the process of actually getting the impression in the lens and so forth. Is that a scary one?
That's a great question. And it was just a very painless process where I came in, the ear mold impression taken by Dr. Scott, and mine were actually taken out at the clinic in California, but Dr. Scott placed the lens. It takes maybe all of about 30 minutes for a doctor to take the impression. And once those are secured, they're packaged and shipped off to the lab in California, where it's going to take about 2 weeks to get them built. And then when they're sent back, the lenses are given to Dr. Scott and his staff, and he places them ever so delicately. He placed mine when I got my initial fitting. It was painless, and he does a very very gentle and very expert job with it. And then I've worked with an audiologist in tuning mine, and sitting on the side of the table being a patient. I worked with Dr. Holly, and we've gotten them tuned. It takes a couple times to get you to what we feel is your optimum hearing, and I've just been enjoying the results and enjoying the process along the way.
That's fantastic. Really appreciate you sharing that. For those of you on the webinar, stick around because we're going to answer your questions and here in just a second. But before we do that, I did want to give you some examples. Remember that audiogram we were talking about earlier. So I'm just going to go ahead and do my cursor here. So remember the audiogram we talked about? So this person can hear pretty well in the lower pitches, but then starts to go down into the high pitches. And down there, it has to be really quite loud before the patient can hear it. But look over here. With Earlens, we were able to, and the staff here was able to bring this patient up to not normal, but almost normal hearing. So what does that mean? So when I said the staff here, this is actually a patient who happens to be the father of one of our researchers. And nothing says confidence in the product like, I'm going to put it on my father. And right here, I'll just read what he says. Having used both conventional hearing aids and Earlens devices, my experience is the Earlens provides unequivocally better clarity and fidelity. Conventional acoustic hearing aids provide a small but noticeable improvement in my understanding of speech, but with Earlens, the improvement is dramatic, both in understanding speech and in richness and timbre of sound. So very important here, he's a veterinarian. And he said, very likely would have retired from my veterinary practice, if it had not been for the Earlens. And that's quality of life. That's continuing to have you do what you want to do in life. I think you guys get the idea about the audiograms here. We're improving things. And this is one of our patients. One of his biggest things was being able to hear his brand new daughter. That's just one of them. They were twins. So Earlens has by far made the most significant improvement in my daily life than anything else in the past 5 years, except maybe his twins, I would imagine. Then one more here, again, a real steeply sloping hearing loss. That's audiology speak for hears almost normal in the low pitches, so you can always tell somebody's talking. And in quiet, you do fine. But then you really have a severe loss in the high frequencies, which means as soon as there's the slightest bit of noise, you can't understand very well anymore without amplification, and maybe even with hearing aids. On the right side there, you see that we really improved this person's hearing. And the results, I'll just pull some highlights here. He can What are some things you can hear with the Earlens that you didn't before? My wife, children, my godchildren. He's doing better in restaurants. He can hear better on the phone because the Earlens system actually interfaces with your iPhone and gives you a direct stream of your phone call or music right into your system there without having to be plugged up. It sounds like you're wearing a headset or some earbuds. But going back, what would you tell someone who was considering Earlens? And I love this part. I would tell them they're perfect for me, better than hearing aids I walked away from years ago. Earlens is so much clearer, more distinct. I can hear the F sound as opposed to an S. And as we talked about earlier, even with hearing aids, that can be difficult and it can make for embarrassment. And that starts to make you not want to go and do the things you want to do. With Earlens, that's what we're all about, is bringing that back. So the next thing I want to do is turn it over to my colleague. Ryan, are you on board?
Yep, I'm here, Fred.
All right. And so Ryan will walk us through the process of getting Earlens and so forth. And then after that, we'll come back to some questions.
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much, Fred, and thank everyone for attending the webinar. What I'm going to do is just go through kind of the process of purchasing Earlens, and then the process once you've decided to move forward with Earlens, how that's going to look. Okay, so as you can see on the slide, so hearing with Earlens, it's a easy and unique process where you get the expertise of both the ENT physician and the audiologist. In this case, you'll meet with Dr. Scott and one of the talented audiologists here at Midwest ENT to determine if your hearing profile and anatomy make you a good candidate for Earlens. Once that's been determined and you decide to move forward, Dr. Scott will take impressions of your ear so your custom Earlens devices can be made for your ears. The impressions are then sent to our corporate office in Menlo Park, California, where the lenses will be custom built in a great, very unique and cool process, and then sent back to Midwest ENT within a couple of weeks. At that point, Dr. Scott will place the lenses on your ear, and the audiologist will help optimize the settings to your hearing profile. Once the lenses are placed and optimized, you'll have 60 days to trial Earlens while working with Dr. Scott, your audiologist, our field audiologist, who you've met, Fred, and Earlens concierge to best optimize your hearing so you're truly delighted in hearing better than you have in years. Okay. As far as the pricing, so first, as a thank you for attending to the webinar today, you'll receive $1,000 off the standard pricing of $12,000, bringing the total to $11,000 for a set on both ears. Included in that $12,000 is a $1,000 impression fee. And if the devices are returned after 60 days, that can be applied towards other hearing aids here at Midwest. There's $8,000 for the device costs, but also included in that price is $3,000 for 3 years of service with both the physician and the audiologist. And that includes up to 5 visits per year where you can come in and meet with Dr. Scott and the audiologist to ensure that your hearing profile is perfect with the Earlens system. We do have complimentary Earlens concierge support. So if you have questions on Bluetooth, charging, any questions that you might have, you can call our concierge service once you are past or during the trial period, but then also once you do get past that 60-day period. We do have financing options available through Allegro. 2 options. There is a no interest 1 year, same as cash, and then a 3-year option, which is as low as $365 per month for a binaural set, so for both ears. Okay. And as a thank you for attending today's webinar, Midwest ENT is offering free sound demos where you can come into the office and hear the difference for yourself. So if you're currently wearing hearing aids, there's even a way to hear the difference between your current devices and the Earlens system. It's an amazing way to hear the difference for yourself, and it's available during this demonstration. It's actually a very cool little device that is placed on the table, and you can put your current hearing aids in there if you're wearing them, and be able to switch back and forth and hear how Earlens would sound compared to those devices. And again, that's a complimentary free sound demonstration. Those times are scheduled for this Tuesday, the 28th, Wednesday the 29th and Thursday the 30th. If you are interested in coming in for that sound demonstration, you can call the office at 605-275-1205 to book that complimentary consult and Earlens sound demo. Again, that's 605-275-1205. And in order to qualify for the $1,000 promotion, you need to schedule that demo in the next 2 weeks to be able to come in here to the office at Midwest. And we very much look forward to seeing you this week and hear how you can be delighted with Earlens and the world's only non-surgical lens that gently vibrates the eardrum. Now we can go through a Q&A session. I know there's several questions that have been already asked in the chat format, which is fantastic. And I'll help kind of moderate those once I will help moderate those once we go through these initial questions. So Dr. Scott, Fred, or any of the other audiologists on the presentation, the first one we'll start with is, can I feel the ear lens when I'm wearing it?
Yeah, I think people do feel it a little bit. I think people that wear hearing aids normally are used to having a feeling of something in their ear. And I guess I wouldn't mind hearing from Bob, who's the guy that actually has one in his ear that he kind of thinks, but people just, I ask everybody after I put them in, you know, I mean, what do they what do they feel? What does it feel like? And they kind of say it doesn't, you know, feels fine. It feels comfortable, but they can tell it's there. Sometimes they can't, but see what Bob thinks.
Right. Thank you, Dr. Scott. So I was just going to take out and show you mine as far as the processor that I wear behind my ear and the transmitter that goes down into the ear. And yes, like Dr. Scott said, there was some initial, just a feeling of fullness, but that went away very fast. I hardly feel anything now when I wear them. I just slip them in the morning and I'm good to go.
Okay. All right. So the next question would be, do I need to change batteries?
No, you don't. They're rechargeable, and they come with a little charger. Some of you may have rechargeable hearing aids, so it would be much the same as that. There's no disposable battery aspect to them. There's no battery door either. You just pop them in the charger and charge them up and you're good to go.
Yeah, it's just about a 3.5 to 4 hour charging cycle will give you, I think, about 25 hours of wearing time. So you're going to get through your full day.
Okay, that's fantastic. Thank you. Okay, so can it connect to my phone or other device?
Yes, it will connect right now with iPhone. I don't know how old the versions go. Ryan or Fred, could you help me with that?
Question. Fred, do you know how the oldest version? Okay, go ahead.
Yeah, the oldest version that, the oldest iPhone version, I believe, was the question there. And I think we go back to the iPhone 6, believe it or not, still has the capability of, in fact, I know that to be true because I had an old iPhone 6 that I gave one of our patients. That's not going to happen with everybody, but she uses it as remote control, even though she doesn't use it as a phone. So I can tell you for certain that it does go back that far.
Okay. Great. And so maybe Bob or Fred, if you, so as far as connecting to devices, we've had a couple questions about streaming and one question about using the AirPods with the lenses. Maybe we could tie some of those questions into this one, just maybe further elaborating on the streaming capabilities and then that question regarding the iPads or AirPods, excuse me.
AirPods. Well, I'll just go ahead and jump in and say that if you're using AirPods, once you get Earlens, you'll have the best, most sophisticated AirPods you've ever thought of. Not only will they be able to give you, the Earlens system will be able to give you the sound like you're wearing earbuds, but without plugging your ear. Because remember, we're not putting sound into the ear at all. We're actually driving that eardrum directly And the difference is that you can hear things really clearly without being plugged up, and so you won't have to use your AirPods. If your phone's connected to both, it would need to be disconnected from one to use the other. And then I'll let Bob talk about it.
Yeah, no, I really enjoy the sound quality that I experience with my, I've got the iPhone 11, and I probably have about 400 songs stored in here. Plus I have my audiobooks on there, and I love to watch YouTube videos. So when I'm out on my bike rides or on my hikes or jogs, I just turn that on and away I go. It's fantastic.
Great question. So actually, another question just came in, and I think it can relate pretty well. Is there noise cancellation on the lenses, or in this case, with the processor or the system in general?
Well, I'll jump in again here. So the magic in our system is that lens and driving the eardrum directly. But that processor does have to take in sound and process it so that we can drive that eardrum. And what you have there is the most sophisticated hearing aid technology on the market today. And part of that includes noise reduction. So there is noise reduction, directionality, the types of features that you would expect on high-end hearing aids. But since we're using a wider bandwidth than they are, we can actually be more effective with it. So that would be my answer on the noise reduction.
Okay, great. And there's actually been 2 to 3 questions about Android support. And I can absolutely say that that is going to be part of future iterations of the device. It's something that is actively being kind of looked into and worked on. But currently, just the iPhone, the MiFi made for iPhone is what connects to the Earlens system. Okay, so this we can kind of tie into a couple of other questions too. And so, can it get wet? So maybe talk to showering and swimming. Had a couple questions about scuba that we do have patients that are scuba divers, and we can talk about some options there and some ideas to work through. So maybe we could just kind of take all of those together and answer regarding getting wet.
Well, I wasn't sure. I will say that from the Earlens perspective, that this the processor on the outside that you wear on the outside of your ear should be treated like a hearing aid, meaning careful, and you take it off when you shower and take it off when you swim and so forth. It's moisture resistant. It is not moisture proof. Now, the lens itself, you should be able to do pretty much what you want. Would you say that, Dr. Scott?
Yeah. People swim. People, don't, or they shower obviously every day. They don't take the lens, the part that goes deep inside, in and out. That just stays there, and they just take the outer part off, just like you would. You wouldn't go into the shower with your hearing aid on. Same idea with this. Right.
I would say that if you are a swimmer for exercise, so in other words, you're doing laps every day, that the chlorine can maybe get in there and dry things out. I would suggest maybe some earplugs, or certainly if you're lake swimming or ocean swimming, the same sort of things.
Okay. In regards to scuba, I know we've got patients that are scuba divers and you can't scuba dive with the devices in, but we do have those patients that take the devices out for their trips and then put them back, or have them taken out in the office, the lenses, during their trip, and wear their existing or current hearing aids, and then when they get back, have those lenses placed again. Have you seen any kind of experience like that, Fred or Dr. Scott?
Yeah, I mean, I just haven't had many patients that have been asking me that, so I don't have much experience with it.
There may be scuba divers here in Sioux Falls, South Dakota.
There are.
I'll put it to you this way. If we did have one patient down in Texas who the question, no, actually I think it might have been Missouri, who went on vacation a few times a year and scuba diving each time. And when he heard us say no scuba, he actually said, okay, that's a no-go for me. But then he came in and listened to the device and was so impressed. He said, well, I really want to do this. And so for him, the process of removing the lens temporarily until he gets back is real simple. And for him, it was worth it to do that a couple times a year when he went on his scuba vacations.
Okay. Thank you, Fred and Dr. Scott. So the last question just here on the top questions about ear lens is how often do I need to get the lenses checked? And then maybe if we could tie in kind of the lifespan of the lenses and, maybe some other maintenance type questions when it comes to earwax and how often patients would need to come in to get that addressed and if the lenses would need to come out at that time too.
Maybe I'll let Bob kind of start.
Well, when we do an initial fitting, after Dr. Scott has placed the lens, and then I do the fitting, I see the patient 2 weeks later just to address the acoustic issues and the amplification issues and make an adjustment there. And then it's another 2 weeks after that, which Dr. Scott checks the integrity of the lens, makes sure they're comfortable and such, and then I go to work on doing further fitting. But after that, it's usually about a 2-month check as far as your schedule, isn't it, Dr. Scott?
Yeah, that's usually what it works out to be. But they can come sooner if there's, like the other thing that wasn't mentioned was if people need an MRI, then the lens needs to be slid out just as if they're going on a scuba diving vacation, okay, and then be put in back in after. So, that kind of thing can be done anytime.
Okay. So kind of along the same lines, what's the lifespan of the lenses based on your experience?
Well, I'll say from the ear lens perspective, and then any of the professionals here at Midwest can speak after that. So the lens is meant to be placed in the ear and stay there. Obviously, well, I say obviously, maybe it's not so obvious. The patient will be coming back here a few times a year, up to 5 different times a year, but certainly quarterly, just to look in there, get Dr. Scott to look in there and make sure everything's okay, and the audiologist can make sure that the patient's doing well. But they don't take the lens out at those times unless it needs for cleaning or something like that. And the lens itself should last several years. But we have a system built in place here with a fantastic warranty, so that if for any reason we need to replace that lens, maybe something damaged it, maybe earwax got down in there and caused something, in those cases, we will replace the lens. And so you have that 3-year warranty on that. During that period, if anything happens, we'll replace any of it. Now, we have patients who have had the lens on several years and have never had it removed for any reason. And then we've had some patients who probably had it removed at least once a year for cleaning, maybe even a little bit more often than that. But the point is, the practice here, Midwest, keeps good track of you and make sure that everything is progressing well over the course of wearing the system.
Okay.
Do you guys have any different experience than that?
No.
Is that about it?
No.
Okay. So I think this might be the last kind of set of questions. So is a device suitable for those with conductive hair loss and the ear loss? But then a similar question, is the device suitable for middle ear damage, but good for bone conduction? So if you could maybe just address if there's any kind of contraindications, and then also from an audiological perspective, how that might look and who may or may not qualify for having ear lens.
I'll let Jade and Bob handle that.
Or would Dr. Scott want to talk about it?
Sure. In general, you need to have a very healthy ear. I mean, you have your hearing loss, but beyond that, it has to be a healthy ear. So it has to be a healthy eardrum, healthy ear canal. You can't, have an endless story of ear infections that are, bothering you on a regular basis, because this is a state-of-the-art device. It sits very deep in your ear. In most people, it's deep enough that it's sort of deeper than where most of the wax is formed. So we use mineral oil to kind of soften that, and it doesn't really collect in any bothersome way for the vast majority of people. But the ear canal has to be big enough to accept the lens. The eardrum has to be healthy with no perforations. The usual advice is that you're not supposed to have had operations in the past on your ossicles or those kinds of things with this technology. Gradually as this becomes, newer and newer versions, there may be some relaxing of some of those things, but this is state-of-the-art work right now, and that's the advice, is that it be a physically healthy ear, other than the hearing loss at this point.
Right. I'll just add to it that remember what the Earlens system is doing. We're not putting sound into the ear. We're using that lens to drive the middle ear system directly. We're almost not as much vibrating the eardrum as much as we are trying to vibrate those bones. So if there's any kind of middle ear problem, it can make it so that we don't have enough power to give the best hearing. So middle ear problems, I think I heard the term conductive problems. If they're significant, that does rule out those individuals.
Okay. Thank you very much, Dr. Scott and Fred. So that wraps up the questions from the audience, and then the general questions that are typically asked about Earlens. So I'd like to maybe send it back to Fred and Dr. Scott to wrap up the webinar. And again, before we end, please feel free to reach out and schedule that complimentary sound demonstration. That number, as you can see on the screen, is 605-275-1205. And you'll get the $1,000 off Earlens for attending the webinar, and just need to schedule that within the next 2 weeks. Okay. So Fred, I'll send it back to you, Dr. Scott.
Appreciate that. So it's been a pleasure working with everybody here today. It's always a pleasure working with Midwest ENT. I just want to say from the Earlens perspective that it is impressive, this staff. We work with some locations where there's one ENT physician and maybe one audiologist that's working with it. Here at Midwest ENT, all of the audiologists are trained and can work with you. And Dr. Scott, like I mentioned before, is one of the foremost people in the world for actually fitting the Earlens system. So we're very happy to be working with Midwest ENT and Dr. Scott and the audiologist, the Dr. Folk and Jade, as well as all the other audiologists here at Midwest ENT. And I'll let Dr. Scott say a few words there.
Well, thank you for giving us some of your time learning about hearing and how to hear better. And we appreciate it, and would love to meet you in the future.
All right. Thanks, everybody. And remember, go ahead, and if you think you might be a candidate or you're just curious, go ahead and give Midwest a call, and they can actually set up a demonstration where you can hear the difference between typical hearing aids or even your own hearing aids in the Earlens system. So we'll be here this week, but even once Brian and I are gone, the folks here at Midwest ENT will be able to take care of your hearing needs, whether it's Earlens or anything else.
Thank you.
All right. Thanks very much. Have a good day, guys.